Get ready, America. Company's coming.
What the heck was that?
Looked like sort of a big turtle in a trench coat.
So get out the hors d'oeuvres, watch your manners, and get ready for the great green adventure.
It's kind of like moonlighting.
And I thought insurance salesmen were pushy.
I love being a turtle!
Doesn't everybody?
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, rated PG.
Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1990 comic book film, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this film that I absolutely adore, I want to give a special shout out to Vontae for requesting this review. If there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to my PayPal. The link will be in the video description down below. Now, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, to me, is a tremendous film. In all honesty, I think this film doesn't get enough credit nowadays. It does have a lot of fans, but when it comes to its critical reputation, it's taken a hit, and I think it's a blow that's not deserved at all. I mean, you see all these articles online basically bashing the movie. You see new reviews where people talk about how cheesy the film is and how it doesn't hold up. And to me, that's a bunch of fucking bullshit, because this film is still every bit as good as it was in 1990, if not even more so. Because this film, in a lot of ways, laid the groundwork for other comic book adaptations to take comic books or properties that were leaned more towards kids and to provide the film adaptation with more of an edge and more genuine depth. It showed that you could take a property like this, which was considered to be just a kid's property, even though the comics were not initially intended for kids, and take it more seriously, and that would still be an immensely successful approach. This film's impact, to me, is also underrated. This is the film that broke the record that John Carpenter's Halloween held for 2 decades or more for being the most successful independent film ever. That's no joke. This film broke that record. And yes, it didn't hold it as long as Halloween. It held it only 9 years until Blair Witch Project came out. But still, it had a bit of a run, and it broke a record that had been standing for decades. So, yeah, I'm a fan of this film. And I'm not ashamed to admit that, because this movie, despite the absolutely awful cover art that makes it look like it's a SpongeBob film, I mean, honestly, it looks like a fucking pineapple under the sea. Other than that, this film, to me, it's hands down still to this day the best movie that features these 4 crime-fighting reptiles. Now, the film is directed by Steve Barron, and to me personally, he did an absolutely spectacular job directing this film. This movie is really impressive from a visual perspective. The directing in this film is dynamic. It's audacious. This is a film where a director could have easily just half-assed it for a quick paycheck, because this film was going to be a hit no matter what. Turtle power was running rampant so hard and so much throughout the streets with so many kids in 1990 that this film was going to be a runaway smash, even if the direction wasn't as audacious as it ultimately was. But I'm glad that Steve Barron decided to swing for the fences with this film and take some really big gambles when it comes to his directing. It helped a film that was pretty cheap in terms of the budget, at least for the time, feel more ambitious and feel like a bigger budgeted production because of the fact that Steve Barron took so many risks and was so inventive and genuinely insane with his directing. I mean, from the very beginning, you got very different unorthodox camera angles, shots from really strange, surreal spots that you normally don't see as often, and shots where the camera is up above looking down below, or down below looking up. And then throughout the rest of the film, he's just throwing in all these other really stunning camera techniques that really showcase his skills as a director. Sweeping shots that go in from up above and then go down and then go at an angle. Shots that are from all different kinds of angles. Right, left, you name it. And even sequences where the camera spins around 360 degrees. It's just a really impressive film when it comes to the directing. And it's not just a visual thing, because there's more to directing than just the technical aspects of it. It's also maintaining the right tone. And I feel he nailed that as well. This is a film that honestly had a tone that was pretty difficult to pull off because of the fact that you have all this silliness, these turtles wisecracking and talking about pizza and delivering all these different one-liners and bits, while also having some really serious, gritty stuff going on with the Shredder and the Foot Clan. And it's easily something that could not have worked because a lesser director or somebody who didn't really know how to handle the tone properly could have made it so it was jarring. But everything is just seamless here when it comes to the tone. It just feels like something that is very organic and natural. And I think a big part of that is due to the direction as well as the screenplay. And when it comes to the bigger, grander, more spectacular moments in the film, like sequences with special effects, or a lot of the moments with the Turtles, or Splinter, or the Shredder, the film is also really solid when it comes to the directing. I think the way that he shot Shredder was absolutely stunning. The entrance of Shredder in this film, where it showcases his shadow on the floor and then moves the camera around again in what looks like a continuous shot and then reveals him, is epic. It gives you chills. It's a genuinely eye-popping sequence. And there's a lot of moments like that. And when it comes to the action in the film, the directing really takes the right approach. It doesn't do anything that distracts you. It provides you with the fights and shows them in a way where you can see each blow. It's not something where it's choppy or it looks like a director's trying to cover up some of their failings. No. It's shot in a way where you actually see what's going on. And I just cannot say enough when it comes to the overall quality of the directing this film. Steve Barron deserves all the credit and then some for his work on this movie. Like I said, he could have easily just went through the motions, and instead he went all out. Now, the script by Todd W. Langan and Bobby Herbeck, that is another element of this film that is simply excellent. This is a screenplay that is full of genuine passion, care, and enthusiasm for these characters and for their world. You can tell that these writers loved the Ninja Turtles. This wasn't a fake passion for these characters. This wasn't one of those instances where somebody just kind of sucks it up and just goes through the motions or fakes it. No, this was genuine, real love and admiration for these characters and their world, and it shows. And the script is also equally as audacious and risky as the directing is. If you really get down to it, this screenplay was incredibly ballsy. This is a film that has a very dark, gritty tone to it. Features troubled youths in New York City being manipulated and used by the Foot and Shredder, having them get involved in all these different crimes and moments of thievery. And then, if that isn't edgy enough, you have multiple moments where the film's heroes fail. They don't always succeed here. It's not like the cartoon. Things feel more real. Things feel more grounded. They make mistakes. They get distracted and get infatuated with hanging out with April and getting a taste of what it's like to be a part of the outside world, and that distracts them to the point where their father figure, their mentor in Splinter, gets taken away from them because they were not paying attention. They were too distracted by these other temptations that they lost track of Splinter. And if that isn't serious enough, then you have a whole sequence, a whole chunk of the film actually, where one of their own is taken out of action, where Raph goes up against a whole small army of foot soldiers and gets beaten up so badly that he's put into a coma. Like, this is the kind of stuff that, as a kid, I didn't really appreciate that much because I didn't really see the importance of it. I didn't really see how unique it was. And now it's just one of those things where you're just like, damn! Like, this film was ahead of its time. You could argue it laid the groundwork for all these other comic book films when it comes to taking a more serious approach on things, while also having moments of levity, and having the jokes, and having the bits with the characters. And I just love the fact that it shows these heroes in vulnerable spots. It was a very unique thing to do, and I applaud the screenwriters for doing that. I also like the way that the screenwriters decided to open the film. I thought that was a really unique way to start the story. It starts out with a very mysterious vibe. You have April O'Neil on the TV reporting about all these strange series of robberies that are going on throughout the city, and they don't have any answers, and the cops don't know anything. And then when you get to the first appearance of the Turtles in the film, you don't actually see them. They are hidden in the shadows when they rescue April from these thugs. it makes the eventual first appearance of the Turtles when they are out of the shadows all the more memorable and epic as a result because of that build-up. And I know in recent years the whole stuff with Danny has gotten some criticism. I don't mind it. I actually like it. I think Danny is a placeholder for the audience, especially for the young audience at the time. They are able to put themselves in Danny's shoes and relate to him when it comes to their own issues with their family and so on. And speaking of family, when you really think about things, this script is pretty dark and pretty fucked up. Because you've got Shredder manipulating these teenagers and completely screwing with their brains and making them think that he is their family. He's using them. He's using teenagers as soldiers and essentially cannon fodder because he doesn't care what the fuck happens to them. He's just using them and abusing them for his own gain and for power. And it's a really dark and twisted thing. And the film also has a bit of an anti-gang message too, which at the time was something that was really prevalent in the 90s, with a lot of these young, troubled teenagers getting wrapped up in these gangs, similar to The Foot. It also is another aspect of the script that makes things feel more real, despite the fact that you've got 4 turtles who could walk and talk and do martial arts, and a talking rat. And speaking of Shredder, I just love the way that the character's written in this, with his backstory and how it connects to Splinter, and how they handle the flashbacks, and how Shredder is a man of very few words, but that's all that you really need, because the way that he's handled is so brilliant. You take a character that in the cartoon was kind of goofy and kind of hard to take seriously at times, and you turn him into a menacing, unforgettable, striking presence. And it also helps that he takes on all 4 of the turtles and basically kicks their asses. They're not able to take him out. He's too much for them. And they have to wind up getting saved by their father figure in Splinter. Which I actually don't mind the way that the film ends. Like over the years, I've kind of flip-flopped on it, because I'm like, oh, I would have liked to have seen the Turtles do more in the fight against Shredder. But now the more I think about it, I'm fine with it, because it's different. It makes it stand out. They fail. They can't do it. They need help. And they get help not only from Splinter, but also from Casey Jones. And speaking of Casey Jones, I absolutely love the way that that character is written. He's got all this wit and charm. The scenes with him and Raph are hilarious, and they have a really good contentious connection with one another, and so does April. If you want to talk about contentious connections, that's like one of the best contentious connections I can think of in this film, is between April and Casey. And there's even other nice bonds that are created when it comes to this script involving Casey. The sequence with Casey and Donatello when they're working on the truck. You really did feel that Casey Jones was a vital part of this story and a vital part of the team when it comes to the Turtles. And April was handled in a way that was very strong. She was courageous. She had an attitude, but it wasn't in a way where she came across as bitchy. And there were a lot of other things too about the script that I really, really loved. I loved the moments where the action slowed down and you had scenes where Leonardo is distraught and he's worried about his brother Raphael, and other sequences where the brothers are dealing with the stress of Splinter being gone. And I love the way that it handles the emotions, because the emotions here are very resonant and they're written in a way where it feels very human. And I think that just makes you relate to these turtles so much more and makes them feel like legit, real characters. And I also love the banter and the wit. I love the fact that the film's not afraid to poke fun at itself. Because in the very beginning, the turtles are all exclaiming how awesome it was that they stopped those thugs. And Donatello kind of ruins the party, ruins the mood by saying something stupid. And he just goes, Bossa Nova! And then they're like, what the fuck did you just say? And then he's like, Chevy Nova? And then they're all like, wow, come on, man. And then he's like, excellent. And then they're like, yeah. That was hilarious. And it was a much more clever gag than I think a lot of people today give it credit for, because you could argue that it's satire. It's the screenwriter showing that they're in on the joke, that they know that this surfer lingo is something that a lot of people don't like, and a lot of adults find to be kind of cringe, and they know that, and then they throw that in there where they're all like, yeah, we kind of know, but here's a little bit of that for you, just to give you a taste that we're in on the joke, and we know how silly this might sound, but we're still going to roll with it. And I love that. I love the fact that the screenwriters, they really did buy into it. They didn't have more moments where they're poking fun at it and showing how ridiculous and stupid it is. I love that there's a little bit of that, but I appreciate the fact that there's not a lot of it, because then it would make it come across as if it's an outright parody, and that really wasn't the intention. And it's just one of those movies where it raises the stakes when it comes to the story in a way that's very genuine and very strong, and it has a lot of genuine depth to it and emotional pathos, and I just think it's a really stellar script. And the cast is phenomenal. Judith Hoag as April O'Neil. I loved her performance in this. Like I said earlier, it's very courageous, but also full of attitude. And she had a lot of charisma and personality. She had great chemistry with the Turtles and with Casey. And in a lot of ways, she's like a much better, much more balanced Kristen Wiig. She has that kind of vibe about her when it comes to her acting and the way that she carries herself, but she actually does handle herself well when it comes to being a bit of a badass, having an edge to her, and it comes across as authentic. Where with Kristen Wiig, whenever she would try to do that, it would come across as very forced, and she seemed to be very uncomfortable and just way out of her comfort zone. Elias Koteas as Casey Jones. I've always loved this performance, and this is honestly probably my favorite performance of his as an actor. You can tell that he's just having a blast playing this character, and as a result, it's just so infectious when it comes to every scene that he's in. You have Michael Turney, who plays Danny. He played the angsty teen role to a hilt. And he had parts of him, too, that you grew to like, because he showed that he actually had compassion. He actually had a heart. And that made it so the character wasn't just nothing but an angsty teenager, because he actually learned some genuine lessons throughout the film. You've got Michael Turney, who plays Danny Pennington. I mean, I've talked about Michael Turney, but you got like Jay Patterson as April's boss. He played the boss role well. He was fine. Raymond Serra, I also really enjoyed as Stearns, Chief Stearns, the angry police captain. James Saito as the Shredder. But goddamn, he slayed every scene that he was in. And he just provided such a menacing presence for this character. It was just perfect. Toshi Shiro Obata as Tatsu. He was a nice extra bit of intimidation as Tatsu. Sam Rockwell, he had a bit role as one of the head thugs of the Foot Clan. You also had Skeet Ulrich and Scott Wolf, who appear as unnamed members of the Foot Clan, but they're uncredited, which I thought was kind of fun. And then, of course, you got the voice cast. Brian Toshi as Leonardo. I thought Brian Toshi was terrific. I've always thought that he did a really great job with Leo, and to me, he's the quintessential voice for Leo. He just really is able to capture all the different nuances of his personality. And speaking of nuances, I mean, all of these voice actors capture the nuances of the Turtles' personalities incredibly well. Josh Pais as Raphael, Corey Feldman as Donatello, although he doesn't really show as much of the brains, and I think they kind of went a little too overboard with that in Turtles 3 because they knew that he wasn't really doing that, because he did seem kind of just a copy of Michelangelo, which was a little disappointing, but I still feel Corey Feldman did a good job. Robbie Rist as Michelangelo. Like, who would have thought that Cousin Oliver, one of the most hated characters in television history, would be so cool? Like, Michelangelo was awesome, and Robbie Rist is a huge part of that because he just was able to embody the character so well. Kevin Clash as Splinter. I love and admire his take on the character, this wise old master and father figure for the Turtles with all these wise words of wisdom. He also had a certain presence to him that was very compelling. You were drawn to him. You can see why the Turtles were so... I'm trying to think of the right word. In love maybe might not be the right word, but you can see why the Turtles responded to him as well as they did. And you can also see why other people respond to him, like Danny. David McCharen, I want to give him credit too because he voiced the Shredder, and I don't think he gets talked about enough because James Saito didn't really do the actual dubbing for the Shredder. It was another guy, and his dubbing for the Shredder is just cold and deadly. Just a very deep, rumbling, just incredibly scary voice. And I also want to give the puppeteers a ton of credit. Martin P. Robinson, who was the facial assistant for Leo. David Foreman, who was the in-suit performer. David Rudman, who did the facial work for Donatello. Leif Tilden and Ernie Reyes Jr., who were in the Donatello suits. Leif Tilden was the in-suit performer, and Ernie Reyes Jr. was the stunt double. David Greenaway as Raph. who did the facial assistant stuff. Josh Pais, who was the in-suit performer, and he also voiced the character. Ken Trom, who also did this stunt double work for Raph. Mac Wilson as Michelangelo, who's the facial assistant. McKellen Sisti is the in-suit performer of Mikey. And Kevin Clash, who also puppeteered Splinter. And Ricky Boyd and Robert Tigner, who worked on the facial work and other puppeteer stuff. So I really find it to be remarkable that this worked out so well, that you had all these things that had to work right. You had to have the in-suit puppeteers find a way to bring these turtles to life that makes them feel like it's not just people in suits. It actually makes them feel like they are real and on the screen, and provide them with certain mannerisms that make them stand apart from one another, and certain bits of technique to really make them look as fluid as they possibly can when it comes to the fight sequences and so on. And I will admit that the facial work at times isn't really as good as it would get later on in the series, especially in Turtles 2, where there are some moments where the lips are moving, but the voice isn't quite matching. But I give it a pass because this is a new thing that they were working on. Like, this was a really ambitious bit of effects, too, by the Jim Henson Creature Shop, because this is something that really had not been done in this capacity. And they invented a lot of things, and they experimented on a lot of stuff to make it work. And to me, it's not cheesy at all. I think it still looks really good. I would say the suit work is more polished in Turtles 2, but it still holds up really well in this film. And I want to give the performers, as well as the makeup effects artists and the puppeteers and the people who worked on the mechanics, an immense amount of credit for their work. And Jim Henson also, this was one of the last things that he was really, I wouldn't say a significant part of, but it was one of the last projects that he was definitely on the set for. And I think you can definitely see some of that Henson magic in the film. Splinter in particular, I mean, the Turtles, they looked good, and I've always felt that they aren't as bad as some people like to make them out to be nowadays. But Splinter, I mean, that looked real. It looked like a real anthropomorphic talking rat. It was that impressive when it comes to the puppeteer work and the makeup effects. There are other elements of this film that are also excellent. I mean, the cinematography by John Fenner. Wow. Like, this film is a work of art when it comes to numerous different sequences. The shots of the New York City skyline at night, the iconic scenes of the turtles, like, underneath, hiding in the sewer, underneath the manhole, the various different shots of the sewers. They're very dark and grimy. And speaking of dark and grimy, the whole film has this dark and grimy look to it. It's almost like a grindhouse movie, and I really love it. It fits the film so well. The turtles come from the sewer, so it makes a lot of sense that the film would look like it came out of the sewer. And I do feel that a lot of the other films in the series lost that, and I really feel that that was an error in judgment, because making things look clean and crisp just doesn't really fit the Turtles' aesthetic as well, especially in live action. And then the editing, I just find the editing to be absolutely marvelous by William D. Gordine, Sally Menke, and James R. Simons. It fit the whole fluidity and the speed of the turtles perfectly. It was very precise, very sharp. And it even had some really cool transitions. I love the way certain scenes transition to the other. I mean, the whole stuff with April's drawings of the turtles and how the drawings are used as transitions to a scene. I just felt that was just phenomenal. It was just really well done. And the music by John Du Perez, it's a smash. This score is a smash. It's got the right amount of variety when it comes to the different kinds of notes and the different compositions. When the film needs to be a little more comical, a little more silly, a little more tongue-in-cheek, the score is definitely willing to go there. But it's also equally as willing to be more serious and gritty and genuinely badass at times. And it's a memorable, iconic score. And the songs on the soundtrack aren't too bad either. I mean, I know some people might find the song cheesy nowadays, but I've always loved it, and I still think it's a pretty damn good track. Turtle Power by Partners in Crime. I also like 9.95. I don't mind the MC Hammer song. There are a couple other songs that are just there for me, but still pretty solid soundtrack when it comes to the original music. And it's a film that goes by at a brisk pace. It's 93 minutes, but really it's an hour and 20 something minutes, like an hour and 27 or something like that, because that's with the end credits. Without the end credits, the film is not even an hour and a half. And it's just a blast. I forgot how much fun this film was to watch. It was a shot in the arm for me. It was a absolute entertaining, enthralling, fun movie. Everything that I want out of a film and then some. And I can't really think of a lot of things that didn't work when it comes to the movie. I mean, I guess some of the jokes are a little bit dated, I have to admit. Some of them don't always land, but that's the case for a lot of comedies or a lot of attempts to be funny. The climax, I've warmed up to it. I've accepted it. It ties into how the turtles need to learn that they can't do everything themselves. So I'm fine with the fact that Splinter comes in and ultimately saves them, as well as Casey with his garbage truck. I'm fine with that. So it really just comes down to a couple jokes that don't land, and it doesn't really affect my overall enjoyment of the film that much at all. I would say it's definitely in my top 10 at the very least of my personal favorite comic book films. And if you haven't seen the movie or it's been a while and you don't remember being that big on it, I definitely do recommend giving it another watch. To me, it's one shell of a good hit. And if I were to rate it, I would give it a 9.95.